All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to uncover the wildly unexpected history of a holiday you probably thought you already had completely figured out: Father's Day. You know, it's one of those celebrations that feels like it's just always been around. A permanent fixture on our calendars filled with what? Neckties, power tools, and maybe a slightly burnt breakfast in bed. But honestly, the true story behind how we got here is an absolute roller coaster. We're talking tragedy, linguistics, blatant commercialism, and some really deep-seated human traditions.
Now, you might be thinking, isn't this just a modern, manufactured holiday, dreamt up in a corporate boardroom somewhere just to sell more greeting cards halfway through the year? And hey, it's a cynical view, sure, but it's a pretty common one. Well, the real story is actually far more fascinating. It stretches back centuries, before the modern greeting card was even a concept. As we'll see, while commercialism definitely played a part in some places, the roots of this day run incredibly deep, and they are surprisingly varied.
Part 1. Deep Roots and Surprising Origins. Let's see how this whole thing builds from ancient religious traditions all the way to the modern observances we recognize today. So we can actually trace the roots of honoring fathers all the way back to the Middle Ages in Catholic Europe. Back then, it was celebrated on March 19th as St. Joseph's Day, honoring the putative father of Jesus. There are actual records of this customary celebration going back to at least 1508, literally over 500 years ago. But the American origin story, the one that really shaped the modern holiday for a massive chunk of the world, is actually born from tragedy. Back in 1908, a woman named Grace Golden Clayton proposed a day to honor men who had died in a horrific mining accident in the U.S. It didn't quite catch on nationally right then, but just 2 years later, in 1910, Sonora Smart Dodd, who was raised alongside her 5 brothers by a single father, successfully convinced the Spokane Ministerial Association in Washington state to celebrate Father's Day nationwide.
And this brings us to a brilliant little detail you've probably never even thought about: the spelling. Why is the apostrophe before the S instead of after? Well, it follows a strict singular possessive grammar rule established by the founder of Mother's Day, Anna Jarvis. She insisted it should be a singular possessive, meant for each family to honor its own mother, rather than a plural possessive commemorating all mothers collectively. So when Father's Day was officially recognized, it simply copied this exact grammatical precedent, meaning every single time you write Father's Day, you're participating in a century-old grammatical ruling about singular devotion. Pretty cool, right?
Part 2. A chaotic global calendar. Let's shift gears for a second and look at how this completely shatters the illusion of a single, unified global date.
Because if you think everyone on Earth is out buying their dad a gift in mid-June, you are definitely in for a surprise. While a huge chunk of the world, places like the US, the UK, India, and China, celebrates on the third Sunday in June, that is far from universal. A lot of Catholic countries, like Spain, Italy, and Portugal, they still stick to that medieval tradition of observing it on St. Joseph's Day, March 19th. Meanwhile, Nordic countries like Sweden, Norway, and Finland, they pushed it all the way back to the second Sunday of November. And then there are a ton of completely unique dates scattered throughout the entire calendar year depending on where you are on the map. It is just this beautifully chaotic patchwork of dates.
Part 3. A world of unique traditions. Because the dates are so wildly different, you can absolutely bet the traditions are just as varied.
This first one is absolutely one of my favorites. Over in Taiwan, the date itself is this delightful linguistic joke. They celebrate Father's Day on August 8th. The 8th day of the 8th month. Now, why? Because the Mandarin pronunciation of the number 8 is ba. So August 8th is ba ba, which sounds exactly like the Mandarin word for dad. It's literally the ba ba holiday. I mean, what a clever phonetic way to lock a holiday into the calendar.
Now, if we travel over to Germany, they take a significantly wilder approach. They celebrate Vatertag on Ascension Day, which is a Thursday 40 days after Easter. And the tradition? It involves getting a small wooden wagon called a Bollerwagen, loading it up to the absolute brim with beer, wine, and traditional food like ham, and going on a men-only hiking tour. It is a massive, boisterous outdoor party. The downside to all this fun, though, according to German statistics, alcohol-related traffic accidents famously triple on this specific day. So yeah, definitely a bit rowdier than just handing your dad a new tie.
Let's contrast that German beer hike with the deep reverence you see in other parts of the world. Take Thailand, for example. There, Father's Day is celebrated on December 5th, which is the birthday of the late King Bhumibol Adulyadej. People wear yellow, since that's the color associated with Monday, the day the king was born, and they traditionally present their fathers with a can of flour, which is a symbol of masculinity. Then, look at Nepal, where they celebrate Kushe Unsi.
This date isn't even fixed on our standard Gregorian calendar at all. It's dictated entirely by the lunar calendar, usually falling in late August or September. Children show their respect by placing a tika on their father's forehead and presenting him with sweets. And all this brilliantly illustrates the push and pull between raw commercialism and deep national tradition. I mean, some origins really are purely commercial. Look at France. The holiday was explicitly introduced there in 1949 by a company called Flaminaire for one simple reason. The director wanted to sell more lighters. Their slogan literally told kids that for Father's Day, dads all wanted a Flaminaire lighter. Crazy, right? But then, on the flip side, you look at South Korea. There, May 8th is Parents' Day, which is a holiday deeply rooted in ancient Confucian values of filial piety, honoring both parents together. Or Russia, where the equivalent is Defender of the Fatherland Day on February 23rd, focusing heavily on honoring men and the armed forces. So the motivations behind the day are quite literally as diverse as the dates themselves.
Part 4. The universal paternal bond. So the crucial point here is how we pull all these scattered dates and distinct traditions back together. What is the common thread?
Because despite the chaotic calendars and despite the vast differences in customs, the universal goal remains exactly the same. Whether you're pulling a beer wagon through the German countryside, wearing yellow to honor a king in Thailand, executing a perfect linguistic pun in Taiwan, or, simply buying a greeting card and a funny mug in the US, the core human desire is identical. It's about taking a moment to celebrate fatherhood, to acknowledge those paternal bonds, and to really recognize the profound influence of fathers and father figures in our families and in our wider society. That fundamental appreciation, that unites us all completely across borders and time zones.
Which brings us to the end of this explainer, and it really leaves us with a final thought to ponder. How do you plan to honor the father figures in your own life this year? Are you going to stick to your local traditions, or maybe borrow a cool idea from somewhere else on the globe? And perhaps more interestingly, considering just how much this day has changed from the Middle Ages to now, what will this chaotic, beautiful, global holiday look like a century from now? Thanks for diving into this fascinating subject with me.